The morning sun filtered through the windows of Golden Dragon Restaurant, casting warm patches of light across the worn wooden floors. It was just past 10, and the breakfast rush had ended, leaving the small family-owned establishment quiet and peaceful. The only sounds were the gentle clink of dishes from the kitchen and the soft traditional music playing through hidden speakers. In the far corner, seated at what the staff considered her table, was Mei Lin. At 72 years old, her small frame appeared delicate, almost fragile beneath her simple navy blue blouse and dark pants. Her silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and though her face showed the lines of age, her dark eyes remained clear and observant. The waitress, Jenny, approached with a smile and a fresh pot of jasmine tea. "Good morning, Mrs. Lin. The usual today?" Jenny asked, already knowing the answer. For 5 years, ever since Mei Lin had moved to the small California town, she had ordered the same meal every Tuesday morning. Mei Lin nodded with a gentle smile. "Yes, please, an extra chili oil today." As Jenny poured the steaming tea, she noticed how Mei Lin's hands moved with unusual precision, how her posture remained perfectly straight without appearing stiff. There was something about the old woman that had always fascinated Jenny, a kind of hidden strength that seemed out of place in someone so advanced in years. What nobody in Pinewood knew was that Mei Lin had once been known as the Crane of Beijing, a wushu champion whose skill and grace had earned her national recognition in China during the 1970s. Later, she had trained elite martial artists and even some movie stars before quietly retiring and following her only son to America after her husband's death. Now, she lived a simple life in a small apartment above the local bookstore. She tended to her plants, practiced her forms in the park at dawn when nobody was watching, and kept largely to herself. The restaurant staff and a few neighbors knew her only as the polite Chinese lady who spoke perfect but formal English and always left generous tips. Mei Lin sipped her tea and gazed out the window at Main Street. She enjoyed watching the town come to life. Mothers with strollers, business people hurrying to meetings, teenagers slouching their way to school. After decades of training bodies to fight, she now found peace in observing ordinary people living ordinary lives. Her food arrived. Steaming dumplings, perfectly pleated and glistening with a slick of chili oil. Mei Lin picked up her chopsticks, holding them with the precision that came from decades of practice. She bowed her head slightly in gratitude before taking a bite, savoring the familiar flavors that reminded her of home. The bell above the restaurant door jingled, breaking the peaceful atmosphere. Mei Lin didn't look up. She had learned long ago to focus on her own business, to create a bubble of calm around herself regardless of her surroundings. But even without looking, she sensed a shift in the energy of the room. Heavy footsteps, multiple sets, crossed the wooden floor. Male voices, loud and rough, filled the space without regard for the quiet morning atmosphere. The smell of leather and motor oil mixed with the restaurant's aromas of ginger and garlic. Mei Lin continued eating her dumplings, maintaining her peaceful ritual even as she felt the eyes of the newcomers sweeping across the restaurant. She had lived long enough to know when trouble walked through a door, but she had also lived long enough to know that trouble often passed by those who didn't engage with it. Little did she know that today, trouble would find her anyway, and decades of disciplined training would be put to unexpected use. "Hey, lady, can we get some service here or what?" The loud voice cut through the peaceful atmosphere of the Golden Dragon like a chainsaw. The speaker was a large man with a bushy beard and arms covered in faded tattoos. A black leather vest with an embroidered skull patch stretched across his broad chest. Jenny, the waitress, hurried over to the group of 5 bikers who had claimed the largest table in the middle of the restaurant. Their helmets now rested on empty chairs, and heavy boots were propped on table edges despite the small, "Please respect our furniture" sign clearly posted on the wall. "Welcome to Golden Dragon. Can I start you with some drinks?" Jenny asked, her smile professional but strained. "Yeah, 5 beers. And make it quick," said the bearded man, obviously the leader. His friends laughed too loudly at nothing in particular. "I'm sorry, sir. We don't serve alcohol before noon. I can offer you tea, coffee, or any soft drink," Jenny explained. The leader's face darkened. "What kind of place doesn't serve beer? This is America, last I checked." Mei Lin continued eating her dumplings, her movements deliberate and unhurried. She had witnessed this type of behavior many times before. In her experience, it was best to remain invisible when angry men were looking for targets for their frustration. What's that old lady eating? One of the bikers pointed toward Mei Lin's corner. Smells better than the crap on this menu. Jenny tried to redirect their attention by handing out menus. Those are our house special dumplings. Very popular. We have many delicious options for. Nah, we want what she's having, interrupted another biker, a thin man with a shaved head. Make it quick. We're starving. Mei Lin felt their eyes on her but maintained her focus on her meal. In her youth, she had learned to center herself amid chaos. It had been essential during competitions, when thousands of eyes watched her every move. Now, it served a different purpose, creating a shield of calm around her in uncomfortable situations. Mr. John, the restaurant owner, emerged from the kitchen, drawn by the commotion. At 65, he was younger than Mei Lin but moved with the stiffness of a man who had spent decades standing over hot woks. Gentlemen, please lower your voices. We have other customers, he said politely but firmly. The leader looked around the nearly empty restaurant. What other customers? Just that old lady, and she's probably deaf anyway. Laughter erupted from the group again. One of them mimicked an elderly person with exaggerated gestures, hunching over and pretending to tremble. Mei Lin took another sip of her jasmine tea, her face betraying no emotion. In her mind, she recalled her master's words from 50 years ago. True strength lies not in responding to every provocation, but in knowing which ones deserve your energy. The bikers grew louder as they ordered, demanding substitutions that weren't on the menu and complaining about prices. When Jenny brought water to their table, one of them deliberately bumped her arm, causing water to spill across the table. Watch it, he barked, as if she had been at fault. Mr. John quickly appeared with towels, mopping up the spill while apologizing unnecessarily. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, Mei Lin noticed, but from controlled anger. The leader of the bikers noticed Mei Lin watching and turned his attention to her. What are you looking at, Grandma? Never seen real men before? Mei Lin simply turned her gaze back to her food, but she was now fully alert. Her apparent disinterest seemed to irritate the man even more. He whispered something to his friends, and they all turned to stare at her, snickering. As Jenny hurried past with a tray of food for another table, the leader stuck out his foot, nearly tripping her. She managed to regain her balance but looked close to tears. Mei Lin placed her chopsticks down carefully. The peaceful part of her morning was clearly over. She had spent decades learning when to engage and when to withdraw. Something in her bones told her that today, withdrawal might not be an option. The biker's food arrived 20 minutes later, steaming plates of dumplings and noodles carefully arranged on the tray Jenny carried. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed each dish on their table, trying to be quick and invisible at the same time. About time, grunted the leader, grabbing a dumpling with his fingers instead of using the chopsticks provided. He bit into it, the hot filling burning his mouth. Damn it! He spat the food onto his plate. This is too hot. You trying to burn us? I'm very sorry, sir, Jenny apologized, though it wasn't her fault. Would you like some water? The thin biker with the shaved head snickered. Maybe that's how they like it in Ching Chang Land, huh? He made an exaggerated squinting motion with his eyes. Mr. Zhang, who had been watching nervously from behind the counter, clenched his fists but said nothing. The restaurant was his livelihood, the culmination of 20 years of savings and hard work. He couldn't afford to lose customers or risk damage to his property, even when confronted with such disrespect. Mei Lin had finished her meal and was sipping the last of her jasmine tea. She placed cash for her bill under the saucer, including her usual generous tip. In normal circumstances, she would now leave quietly, perhaps stopping to compliment Mr. Zhang on the meal as she always did. But today, something held her in place. The leader of the bikers had noticed her again. Perhaps it was her stillness that drew his attention, or the fact that she seemed completely unbothered by their presence. Whatever the reason, he found it irritating. Hey, China doll, he called out, his voice loud enough to make the other two customers in the far corner look up in alarm. What are you staring at? Mei Lin wasn't staring at anything. Her eyes had been on her teacup, her mind already planning her afternoon Tai Chi practice. But now, she raised her gaze to meet his. Her expression remained neutral, neither afraid nor challenging. The lack of reaction seemed to anger the man even more. He stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. At 6'3", he towered over most people in the room. His leather vest revealed muscular arms covered in tattoos, some depicting skulls and snakes, others showing symbols that marked him as part of a motorcycle gang. "I asked you a question, lady," he said, taking a step toward her table. Mei Lin set down her cup with careful precision. "I am simply enjoying my tea," she replied, her voice soft but clear. Her English was perfect, though flavored with the accent of her homeland. The biker's friends laughed. "Ooh, she speaks," one mocked. The leader took another step closer. "Well, your staring is ruining my meal. Maybe you should take those slanty eyes somewhere else." Jenny gasped at the remark. Mr. John moved forward, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "Sir, please return to your table, or I will have to ask you to leave." The biker didn't even look at Mr. John. "Stay out of this, old man. I'm talking to Grandma here." Mei Lin remained seated, her posture straight, hands resting lightly on the table. To the casual observer, she appeared completely relaxed. But had anyone been watching closely, they might have noticed how her feet had shifted slightly under the table, how her breathing had deepened and slowed. "There is room in this restaurant for all," she said calmly. "Please enjoy your meal with your friends." The leader's face reddened. He was not used to being dismissed, especially not by a tiny old woman who barely came up to his chest. In 3 quick strides, he reached her table. "Maybe you don't understand English so good," he said, leaning down until his face was level with hers. His breath smelled of cigarettes and beer from earlier that morning. "I said you should leave." With one swipe of his arm, he knocked her teacup off the table. It shattered on the floor, sending shards of porcelain and drops of tea in all directions. The restaurant fell completely silent. Even the other bikers seemed shocked by the sudden escalation. Mei Lin looked at the broken cup, then back at the man's face. For the first time, a flicker of emotion crossed her features, not fear, as he had expected, but something that looked almost like pity. "That," she said quietly, "was very disrespectful." The leader of the bikers straightened up, a smirk spreading across his face as he looked down at Mei Lin. The broken pieces of the teacup lay scattered around her feet, small puddles of jasmine tea seeping into the wooden floor. "Disrespectful," he repeated, his voice mock serious. "Well, excuse me, Your Highness." He gave an exaggerated bow, encouraging his friends to laugh. Mei Lin stood up slowly. Even at her full height, she barely reached the man's shoulders. Her movements were smooth and deliberate, nothing hurried or panicked in her manner. The restaurant remained utterly silent except for the nervous breathing of the other customers. "You owe Mr. Zhang for the broken cup," she said, her voice calm but firm, "and you owe Jenny an apology for your behavior." The biker's eyebrows shot up in surprise, then lowered in anger. He hadn't expected this tiny woman to challenge him. "I don't owe anybody anything, lady. And who do you think you are, telling me what to do?" Mei Lin's expression remained unchanged. "I am simply a customer like you, but I respect this place and these people." Mr. Zhang approached cautiously, a small broom and dustpan in his hands. "Please, Mrs. Lin, it's okay. I can handle this." His eyes were pleading with her to let the situation go. The biker turned to Mr. Zhang. "Yeah, listen to your boss, Mrs. Lin," he said, mocking her name. "Clean up my mess like a good boy." One of the other bikers, a heavy-set man with a red bandana, called out, "Come on, Dale, let's just eat. Food's getting cold." But Dale, the leader, was too invested now. Something about the old woman's calm demeanor infuriated him. People were supposed to be scared when he got in their face, especially little old ladies. "Not until Grandma here learns some manners," Dale said, turning back to Mei Lin. "Where I come from, when someone like me is talking, someone like you listens." Mei Lin tilted her head slightly. "And where I come from, respect is earned, not demanded." A vein pulsed in Dale's forehead. He stepped closer, intentionally invading her personal space. "You think I care about your backwards country and its—" "Sir," Mei Lin interrupted, her voice suddenly sharper, though still quiet. "I will ask you once to please step back and return to your table." The change in her tone was subtle but unmistakable. It carried a weight that hadn't been there before, an authority that seemed out of place coming from such a small, elderly woman. For just a moment, Dale hesitated. Something in the back of his mind, some ancient survival instinct perhaps, sensed danger. But his pride wouldn't let him back down, not in front of his friends, not from an old woman half his size. Or what? He sneered, leaning even closer. What's a little old lady going to do about it? Jenny, the waitress, had edged toward the phone behind the counter, ready to call for help. The other customers were gathering their belongings, preparing to leave if things got worse. I have lived 72 years, Mei Lin said, looking directly into Dale's eyes. In that time, I have learned that there is no value in fighting with those who do not wish to listen. But I have also learned that some people only understand one language. She spoke perfect English, but her last words carried a hint of something else. Not a threat exactly, but a warning. Dale laughed, but it sounded forced even to his own ears. Is that supposed to scare me? I've eaten scarier things for breakfast. One of his friends called out, Dale, come on, man. Let's just eat and go. But Dale couldn't back down now. He reached out and placed a heavy hand on Mei Lin's shoulder, intending to push her back into her seat. Sit down and shut up, Grandma, before you hurt yourself. The moment his hand made contact with her shoulder, something changed. It was subtle. A shift in Mei Lin's breathing, a slight adjustment in her stance, a new focus in her eyes. That, she said quietly, was your first and final warning. Before Dale could process her words, Mei Lin's hand moved. It was a simple motion, seemingly gentle, as she reached up and placed her fingers lightly on his wrist. And yet, somehow, Dale found his hand no longer on her shoulder. Instead, it was caught in what felt like an iron grip, though Mei Lin appeared to be barely touching him. Confusion crossed his face, followed quickly by the first flicker of genuine uncertainty. Dale stared at his wrist, confused by the strange sensation. Mei Lin's fingers looked like they were barely touching him, yet he couldn't move his arm at all. It wasn't painful, not yet, but something about her grip made him suddenly aware of his own vulnerability. What the hell? He muttered, trying to pull away. The rest of the restaurant had gone completely still. Mr. Zhang stood frozen with his broom, his eyes wide with disbelief. Jenny had stopped halfway to the phone, her mouth slightly open. Even the other bikers had fallen silent, their food forgotten as they watched the strange standoff. Please release me and return to your table, Mei Lin said calmly, as though she were asking him to pass the salt. Dale's confusion turned quickly to anger. He yanked his arm backward with all his strength, determined to break free from this old woman's inexplicable hold. What happened next seemed impossible to everyone watching. Instead of breaking Mei Lin's grip, Dale's sudden movement appeared to work against him. His own force, redirected by some invisible technique, sent him stumbling backward. He tripped over his own feet and crashed into an empty table, sending plates and glasses flying. The sound of breaking dishes echoed through the restaurant. Dale lay sprawled among the wreckage, blinking in shock. He hadn't felt Mei Lin push him. In fact, she hadn't appeared to move at all. Yet somehow, he'd ended up 10 feet away on his back. What the? How did you? He struggled to form a complete sentence as he scrambled to his feet. The other bikers stood up now, their chairs scraping against the floor. They looked from their fallen leader to the small elderly woman who still stood calmly by her table. Dale, you okay? Asked the man with the red bandana. Dale's face had turned deep red with embarrassment and rage. She pushed me, he shouted, though everyone in the restaurant had seen that Mei Lin had barely moved. I did not push you, Mei Lin corrected gently. You pushed yourself. There was no mockery in her voice, only a simple statement of fact. One of the younger bikers, a muscular man with a shaved head, stepped forward. Nobody does that to one of us, he growled, cracking his knuckles as he approached Mei Lin. Mr. Zhang moved quickly toward them. Please, no trouble, I call police now. But before he could reach the phone, the young biker had lunged at Mei Lin, his large fist swinging toward her face. What followed seemed to happen in slow motion for those watching. Mei Lin shifted her weight slightly, her body turning just enough that the punch missed her by inches. In the same fluid motion, her hand came up and lightly touched the biker's extended arm. Somehow, that gentle touch was enough to redirect his entire body. His momentum carried him forward, past Mei Lin, until he crashed into the wall. A framed picture fell and shattered as the biker slumped to the floor, looking dazed. Jimmy, another biker called out, rushing toward his fallen friend. Dale had regained his footing by now. Get her, he commanded, and the remaining 3 bikers moved to surround Mei Lin. For the first time, the elderly woman sighed, a sound of disappointment rather than fear. She shifted her stance slightly, her feet moving into a position that would have been instantly recognizable to anyone trained in traditional Chinese martial arts. "I have no wish to harm any of you," she said clearly, "but I will defend myself." The bikers hesitated, suddenly uncertain. They had expected an easy target, a frightened old woman who would cower before them. Instead, they faced someone who had just taken down two of their friends without apparent effort. Dale, unwilling to accept defeat, pointed at Mai Lin and shouted, "She's just one old lady. There's three of us left." But his friends weren't moving. They stared at Mai Lin, noting for the first time the way she stood, balanced and rooted, her hands relaxed but ready, her eyes alert and focused. "Dale," said the biker with the bandana slowly, "I think we should go." "Are you kidding me?" Dale sputtered. "You're afraid of a grandma." The bandana-wearing biker didn't take his eyes off Mai Lin. "Look at her, man, really look." And for the first time, Dale did. Beyond the gray hair and the lined face, he saw something in her eyes and stance that finally penetrated his anger. This wasn't just any elderly woman. This was someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Dale's pride wouldn't let him back down, not even as warning bells rang in his head. The restaurant had fallen into complete silence. Even the kitchen staff had emerged to witness the strange standoff between the elderly Chinese woman and the remaining bikers. "I don't care who she is," Dale growled, his voice lower now, more dangerous. "Nobody makes a fool out of me." He reached behind his back and pulled out a small switchblade. The metallic click as it opened echoed through the restaurant. Several gasps came from the onlookers, and Mr. John grabbed the phone to dial 911. Mai Lin's expression didn't change, but her eyes focused on the blade. For 50 years, she had trained against weapons of all kinds. In her prime, she had faced opponents with swords, staffs, and chains. A small knife in the hands of an untrained man was nothing she hadn't seen before. "A weapon," she said quietly, "is a sign of weakness, not strength." Dale's laugh was harsh. "Let's see how weak you think it is when I'm done." He lunged forward, knife extended. What happened next seemed impossible to everyone watching. Mai Lin moved like water, flowing around the knife thrust with such precision that Dale stumbled forward, his momentum carrying him past her. Before he could turn, Mai Lin's hand struck his wrist with a short, sharp movement. The knife clattered to the floor as Dale howled in pain, clutching his now numb hand. "My hand! What did you do to my hand?" he shouted, his face contorted with rage and fear. "Pressure point," Mai Lin answered simply. "The feeling will return shortly." The biker with the red bandana decided he'd seen enough. He charged at Mai Lin from behind, hoping to catch her off guard. Without even turning around, she sidestepped at the last moment, extending her foot just enough to trip him. As he fell forward, she helped him along with a gentle push to his back, sending him crashing into Dale. Both men tumbled to the floor in a tangle of limbs. The last standing biker, a heavy-set man with a full beard, looked at his fallen comrades and then back at Mai Lin. She stood calmly in the center of the restaurant, not even breathing hard despite having disabled 4 men in less than a minute. "Lady," he said slowly, raising his hands, "I don't want any trouble." Mai Lin nodded. A wise decision. But Dale wasn't finished. Struggling to his feet, still unable to feel his right hand properly, he grabbed a chair with his left and swung it wildly at Mai Lin. The elderly woman moved with grace that belied her age. She stepped inside the arc of the chair, one hand rising to block Dale's arm while the other struck his chest with an open palm. The blow didn't look powerful. Her hand simply touched him, but Dale's eyes widened in shock as he felt something like an electric current run through his body. The chair dropped from his grip as he staggered backward, struggling to breathe. "What? What was that?" he gasped. "Guy," Mai Lin replied. "Life energy. I disrupted yours, just for a moment." Dale collapsed into a sitting position on the floor, his fight gone, replaced by bewilderment and a strange sense of respect. By now, Jimmy had recovered enough to stand, though he leaned against the wall for support. The others remained on the floor, watching Mai Lin with newfound caution. Mr. Zhang, phone still in hand, approached cautiously. "Mrs. Lin, the police are on their way." Mai Lin nodded, then turned to the fallen bikers. "I did not want this confrontation," she told them, her voice gentle but firm. Violence should always be the last option, not the first. Dale looked up at her, his usual bravado completely gone. "Who are you?" he asked. For the first time, a small smile appeared on Mai Lin's face. Just an old woman who wanted to enjoy her breakfast in peace. From outside came the sound of approaching sirens. The red bandana biker groaned. "Dale, we're gonna get arrested again." Mei Lin considered them for a moment, then turned to Mr. Zhang. When the police arrive, she said, "I will tell them these men have agreed to pay for all damages and will not return to cause more trouble." She looked pointedly at Dale. "Isn't that right?" Dale nodded slowly, a strange mixture of humiliation and relief washing over his face. "Yes, ma'am," he said, the respectful term coming naturally now. 2 police cars pulled up outside the Golden Dragon, their red and blue lights flashing through the restaurant windows. Officer Mike Wilson and his partner Sarah Chen stepped through the door, hands resting cautiously on their holsters as they surveyed the scene. What they found was not what the dispatcher had described. Instead of an active fight, they saw 4 large men sitting quietly on the floor. Broken dishes and an overturned table showed evidence of a disturbance, but the situation appeared under control. "What happened here?" Officer Wilson asked, looking from the bikers to Mr. Zhang. Before the restaurant owner could speak, Mei Lin stepped forward. "A small misunderstanding," she said calmly. "These gentlemen became upset, but we have resolved our differences." Officer Chen raised an eyebrow, looking at the bikers. One was still rubbing his wrist, another massaging his chest. They didn't look like men who had willingly resolved differences. "Ma'am, we received a call about an assault with a weapon," Officer Chen said, studying Mai Lin with curiosity. There was something familiar about the elderly woman, though she couldn't place it. Dale, still sitting on the floor, spoke up. "There was no assault. He hesitated, swallowing his pride. "I was being disrespectful. The lady taught me a lesson." The officers exchanged surprised glances. Sarah Chen looked more closely at Mai Lin, taking in her perfect posture and calm demeanor. "Mrs. Lin has offered us a chance to make things right," Dale continued, getting slowly to his feet. "We'll pay for everything we broke." Mr. Zhang nodded in confirmation, though he still looked stunned by the whole situation. Officer Wilson wasn't satisfied. Someone mentioned a knife. A heavy silence fell. Everyone looked at Dale. "I dropped it," he finally admitted. "It's over there." He pointed to where the switchblade lay on the floor near the wall. Officer Wilson retrieved the knife, examining it with a frown. "This is illegal to carry concealed," he said. "I could arrest you for that alone." Mei Lin stepped forward again. "Officer, perhaps there is another solution? These men have learned something valuable today. I believe they will remember this lesson better without spending time in the cell." Officer Chen was still studying Mai Lin, her brow furrowed in concentration. Suddenly, her eyes widened. "Wait a minute. Are you Mai Lin, the wushu champion? My grandmother had a newspaper clipping of you from Beijing, 1972. A murmur ran through the restaurant. Even the bikers looked at Mai Lin with new understanding. Mei Lin inclined her head modestly. "That was a long time ago, officer." "You are known as the Crane of Beijing," Officer Chen continued, excitement in her voice. "My grandmother said you were the greatest female martial artist in China." The bikers exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from confusion to awe as they realized exactly who they had challenged. Mr. Zhang's mouth fell open. "Mrs. Lin, you never told me." "It was not important," Mei Lin replied simply. "That life is behind me now." Officer Wilson looked from the elderly Chinese woman to the 4 large bikers, understanding finally dawning on his face. "Are you telling me that you," he gestured at Mai Lin, "handled all 4 of these men by yourself?" Jenny, who had been watching from behind the counter, spoke up. "It was amazing, officer. They couldn't even touch her. She moved like water." Dale nodded slowly. "I've never seen anything like it," he admitted. "She could have really hurt us, but she didn't." Officer Wilson holstered his weapon, making a decision. "Here's what's going to happen. You," he pointed at Dale, "are going to surrender this knife permanently. And all of you are going to pay for the damages, plus the generous tip for the staff's trouble." "Yes, sir," Dale agreed immediately. And then, Wilson continued, You're going to shake Mrs. Lin's hand and thank her for not pressing charges. One by one, the bikers approached Mei Lin. Each one towered over her, yet now they moved with cautious respect, even reverence. I'm sorry, ma'am, Dale said when his turn came. And thank you for the lesson. Mei Lin accepted his handshake with grace. The true victory is not in defeating an opponent, she told him quietly, but in making them a friend. 3 weeks had passed since the incident at the Golden Dragon restaurant. The story had spread through the small town of Pinewood like wildfire. What began as whispers between neighbors soon became animated conversations at the local coffee shop and grocery store. Everyone was talking about how the quiet elderly Chinese woman had single-handedly subdued 4 burly bikers without breaking a sweat. Mei Lin had hoped to return to her peaceful routine, but found that impossible. When she visited the park for her morning Tai Chi practice, she often discovered a small group of onlookers watching from a respectful distance. Some even attempted to mimic her graceful movements. On this particular Wednesday morning, Mei Lin pushed open the door to the Golden Dragon and found the restaurant busier than she had ever seen it. Mr. Zhang hurried over, beaming. "Mrs. Lin, your usual table is waiting," he said, leading her to her corner spot. The restaurant had changed. A new glass display case stood near the entrance, containing newspaper clippings from the 1970s showing a young, fierce-looking Mei Lin accepting trophies and medals. Mr. Zhang had tracked down the articles after learning her identity. "Business has never been better," he confided as he poured her jasmine tea. "People come from the next town over just to see where it happened." Mei Lin smiled politely, though she found the attention somewhat uncomfortable. She had left behind the world of competitions and recognition decades ago, preferring a quiet life of reflection. As she sipped her tea, the door opened again. Mei Lin glanced up and nearly dropped her cup in surprise. Dale and his biker friends entered the restaurant, looking oddly out of place without their usual swagger. The restaurant fell silent as the other customers stared. Dale nodded awkwardly to Mr. John, then approached Mei Lin's table. "Good morning, Mrs. Lin," he said, his voice respectful. "May we join you?" Mei Lin studied him for a moment, then gestured to the empty chairs. "Please." The 4 men sat down carefully, as if afraid they might break the furniture. Dale cleared his throat. "We wanted to thank you properly," he said. "After that day, well, it made us think about some things." Jimmy, the youngest biker, spoke up. "I looked you up online. You're famous. You trained special forces in China. You even taught some movie stars in Hong Kong." Mei Lin inclined her head slightly. "That was another life. We were wondering," Dale continued, looking uncharacteristically nervous, "if you would consider teaching us." Mei Lin's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Teaching you what, exactly?" "Whatever you did to us," Dale replied. "Not the fighting part exactly, but the discipline, the control." He looked down at his large hands, which now seemed clumsy to him. "I've been angry my whole life, throwing my weight around. Then you took me down without even trying, made me look like a child." "I did not intend to humiliate you," Mei Lin said gently. "No, that's just it," Dale insisted. "You could have, but you didn't. You could have really hurt us, but you chose not to." Red Bandana, whose real name was Tom, leaned forward. "We've never met anyone like you, Mrs. Lin. You got this peace about you, even when we were threatening you." Mei Lin considered their request carefully. In her younger days, she had been selective about her students, accepting only those who showed exceptional promise. But with age had come wisdom. Perhaps what these men needed was not fighting skill, but the philosophy behind it. "The path is not easy," she said finally. "It begins not with the fists, but with the mind and heart." "We're willing to learn," Dale assured her. "Whatever it takes." Mr. Zhang approached with a fresh pot of tea. He placed it on the table and gave Mei Lin a small bow of respect before walking away. "Very well," Mei Lin decided. "We will begin with the basics. Meet me in the park tomorrow at sunrise." As the bikers thanked her, Mei Lin noticed Officer Chen entering the restaurant with an elderly woman. The older woman clutched a faded newspaper clipping and looked around eagerly. "Grandmother insisted on meeting you," Officer Chen explained as they approached. "She kept your picture all these years." The elderly Chinese woman smiled shyly at Mei Lin, speaking in their native dialect. You were my hero when I was young. For the first time in many years, Mei Lin felt a circle completing. The young woman she had been, the fighter who had won championships and broken barriers, had somehow led to this moment. Here she was, in a small American town, surrounded by people who respected her not just for her skills, but for her wisdom. As she looked around at the unlikely gathering, the bikers, the police officer, the old fan, and the restaurant owner, Mei Lin realized that perhaps this new chapter might be the most meaningful of all.